Spoiler alert here on the Bulletin, not because we're going to be saying spoilers in this video, but because we are going to be talking about spoilers, what they are, and what is the etiquette and responsibility we have as gamers or just general consumers of media when it comes to spoilers. Let's get to it. Janet Garcia here with Nerd Much for the Bulletin, and starting just with the definition of what a spoiler is, it's pieces of information that threaten to give away crucial details of whatever medium it is, aka info that would spoil the thing for someone. Now that's really vague, and I want to kind of emphasize that for someone. That means I think there are things we can generally agree are spoilers, like if we think back to original Star Wars, like Luke's father, that's a spoiler, right? It would kind of ruin a big part of the story for people. But spoilers are still so often person-to-person based, and for that reason, I think us as gamers or nerds in general need to kind of ease up on this whole idea of spoilers and people giving out spoilers as if it's something that people can like fully control. Now, sometimes I think people do go a little extreme with not caring about spoilers. So I'm going to kind of talk in this video about what I think spoiler etiquette is and should be, and kind of how we should approach that as a community. So there are different types of spoilers, especially when it comes to video games, and that makes it a little different than other mediums, because in gaming we of course have narrative, but we also have gameplay. So people are active participants in the game, and that kind of changes what spoilers are and how we think about them. Spoilers are kind of broken into two categories in terms of video games, in my opinion. So we have narrative spoilers, which are things like the actual plot of the game, but we also have experiential spoilers, which are related to gameplay and details related to, how the game actually functions and what you're doing as a player and how that gameplay might shift at different times, or certain, scenes or bosses or encounters you might have in a game. And those are kind of the two categories of spoilers. Now, narrative spoilers are very easy to avoid because just don't talk about what happens in the plot. And I think all of us can kind of agree that that's very straightforward, right? Though there's a little bit of gray in there too. Like, spoilers, you fight Bowser in Mario Odyssey. It's not really a spoiler because it's expected. It does get a little bit gray in some of those areas, I think, for some people, like, revealing certain Pokemon or certain, like, little tiny pieces of the story that some people might feel is not a big deal, but other people might get really offended by. But generally speaking, narrative's pretty straightforward. Where it gets a little bit slippery is when we have like these more nuanced spoilers. So an experiential spoiler might be like the introduction of a certain game mechanic, but it's also kind of a petty small part of the entire game. So some people might think of that as a spoiler, some people might not. Like you get different, like some of the abilities that you get in Celeste, for instance, like talking about those openly when the game first comes out might feel like a spoiler to some people, but for other people they're like, I'm just talking about the game that just came out, like what's the big deal, like I'm just sharing a small detail that they feel isn't critical to their enjoyment of the game. So once again, spoilers have to do with ruining someone's enjoyment, and for all of us that means different things. Like for me, I don't even consume certain marketing content or view certain trailers or view like first couple hour gameplay footage, because for me that would feel like a spoiler and would ruin my first experience with that medium. And then there's also some spoilers that I think are kind of petty, but some people get upset by, like the screenshot of the ending of a game. Like if it doesn't give away anything super narrative based, like what's the big deal? But for some players, they're like, no, I wanted to reach that first on my own and see that for myself as kind of a reward for having finished something. And seeing that not in the context of them experiencing it feels like a spoiler and kind of taking away from that joy they would have had. So with all this being said, the TLDR of it is the exact definition of what is a spoiler. It changes from game to game and from person to person. So at the end of the day, I think all we can do as people is try not to take spoilers so personally, but also try not to be a jerk about it. So the way I think we can go about that is as follows. I think you should avoid posting things that you feel could be interpreted as spoilery for definitely the first month of a game's release up to 2 months, just because games are a bit harder to access than I think movies and television are, like Netflix and things like that. So for that reason, I think you should take a little bit of time. At the same time, I think you can still talk about a game and share things, but just kind of be mindful of it. You don't have to drastically change anything, just be mindful of it. And I think, though, a super narrative-driven game, you need to wait like 3 to 5 years before you post anything that's spoiler related for it openly. So like A Way Out is a great example. That game is so narrative driven and it has like this really interesting ending. And if the ending was ruined for me for that game, I would have just a totally different perspective of it and I wouldn't enjoy it nearly as much. So I would be really careful about that. I think the other thing too is the medium. So it's okay to do spoilers in articles. It's okay to do spoilers in YouTube videos or in live streams, as long as you warn people about it and say, hey, if you haven't consumed it and you don't want any spoilers, skip ahead or don't watch this, or, you know, don't read the rest of this section. But I think when it comes to social media posts, so like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of that, spoiler alerts are nice, but they don't really help because you can still kind of see it. So like I might be reading spoiler alert in your tweet, but then I already see the rest of it. So even if I'm like, oh no, I don't want to read this, it's kind of too late. So be mindful of that. But as a person, if you know you're sensitive to spoilers and you're really worried about spoilers, at the end of the day, like you have to kind of take it on yourself to decide, you know, what games do I really not want spoiled for me? Prioritize playing those, getting those as soon as they come out and playing as much as you can. And I would say if you're like that, you know, anal about it and you know yourself and you know it's a big deal to you, go ahead and just kind of get off social media or, you know, just do what you need to do to avoid spoilers, because you can't guarantee that everyone out there is going to not reveal things about the game they're playing. It's just the reality of being on the internet. So if it's a big deal to you, just shut it down. You know, it doesn't have to be for forever, just a couple days, just some time to like let yourself actually play through it, if it's, or at least play through part of it if it's something that's important to you. And that's just about where your priorities lie. I did that for, I often do that for the Star Wars films because I know people are going to be tweeting about it. I know you guys are reckless, so I know, like, and I want to go in, I like going into those films fresh. Back when I was kind of more into the franchise, now I'm kind of like, but that's a great example of me being like, okay, I'm going to get my, I couldn't get like maybe a midnight or the 7 p.m., but I got like day of or next day, and I'm like, I'm just going to not be on the internet. And it sucks because we're so heavily on the internet, but you kind of just have to figure out like, where do your priorities lie, and just know that you are kind of always putting yourself at risk for spoilers when you are on the internet, especially when you're like engaging with other people that are interested in the same medium or the same franchise that you're interested in. So that's kind of the two sides of it. So there's the people that are getting things spoiled and the people that are spoiling. And at the end of the day, I think we should just do our best to, you know, be kind to each other, be understanding, and, you know, try to do, you know, no damage to people. So do your best not to post spoilers, but also, you know, as someone consuming content, like, try to take things not so personal in terms of the spoiler thing and figure out what works for you so that you can enjoy the content that you're consuming. Part of that too is sometimes I do tweet ahead and I mention, hey guys, like, you know, and you can mute people on Twitter. I'll be like, I'm going to be doing some screenshot drops of Breath of the Wild. Like, if you're not trying to see that, like, you need to just mute me for a while or just do what you need to do because it's happening. But yeah, so go ahead, guys, and just be kind to each other. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, and let me know in the comments below, what do you consider a spoiler in terms of video games? How do you go about avoiding spoilers? And what do you think is the range on, like, when you can reveal things? What exactly is spoiler etiquette to you? Let me know what you're thinking, and I'll see you here next time. Bye.